Again, you're being an activist. I am
That's not appropriate, sir.
Who are you with? What's your name?
That's not an appropriate question for you to ask.
You're going to ask how many questions? You get 3?
You're a stupid son of a bitch.
Good morning, Jacksonville. I am here live with Tracy in studio, and we're going to be talking about his run for District 8 City Council seat here in Jacksonville. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, sir.
All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a conversation about his run. It's getting close. March 21st is the date that you can vote in the unitary election. And then that will tell us many, many things, whether or not he goes on to the general election out in which will occur in May. So thank you guys for watching so early. Friendly Fire is simply a show where I bring candidates on, we ask them tough questions, or we do a retrospective after their elections, because what we want to do is highlight Libertarian candidates. And Tracy is indeed a Libertarian candidate. So let's get to it. We're going to talk. I came across an article a while back, and it was titled 20 Questions for Jacksonville Candidates. Now, we're not going to ask all 20 questions necessarily. We're just going to go down and ask a few of these questions. Now, I'll put the article up on the screen so that you can see it. So give me just a moment. Let's put that article right up on the screen here so that everybody can see these 20 questions that we've got. And let's see, there we are. So now the article is up on the screen, and you can see it says 20 questions for Jacksonville candidates. This comes from the Jackson Mag. So this is an online magazine here in Jacksonville. So let's take a look at some of these 20 questions here. So the subheading here is, in the guest editorial, Jacksonville attorney and author Chris Hand, I'm not familiar with who Chris Hand is, he looks toward the 2023 local elections with a list of incisive questions for the candidates running. So we're going to we're going to see how well Tracy does with answering some of these questions, and if there's any comments or questions in the in the comments section, we might take a look at some of those as well. So, but I want to thank you guys for tuning in. So let's get to it. Before we ask some of these questions, though, let's just talk generally about how is your run going?
It's going pretty good. Really, really good. Now, I have to admit that ever since the election interference with the redistricting of the lines that happened in Jacksonville just recently, about a couple of months ago, I went from campaigning from down in Duval Road to the south of Trout River, going towards Myrtle, Moncrief, Gulf Fair, in that area. And once the city redistricted the lines and put me further north of Trout River, going into Ocean Way, New Berlin, Dunn's Creek, Yellow Bluff, in that area, specifically, especially Riverside, River City Marketplace. I keep getting Riverside and River City mixed up.
Right.
But River City Marketplace. And once I went to that district, it gave me only a couple of months to acclimate myself to a different crowd of people that never knew who I was, because I was on the other side of the river campaigning there.
Right.
So I pretty much cut off a big portion of my potential voting list of constituents I could have had.
Right.
But still, with that being said, it's still going really well because I didn't have to change my message all that much, because the message is still resonating the same way: individual liberty, financial freedom, and pulling back government interference.
Okay.
Now, the difference is with this area, there's a lot more development, a lot more businesses out there, and they really resonate with that message of getting government out of the way so they can develop and get their small business prospering without excess taxation. So that's a really good part about that campaign.
Okay, awesome. And let's take a look at some of these questions here. Actually, I take it back. I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit. Sorry, folks. Let me ask you, when you say that you haven't changed your message that much and it's resonating, so you're basically finding that the people that have been added to the district that you're in now have similar concerns to the people that were in the district prior.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. What are some of those concerns that they have? Boy, my tongue tied today.
Same.
What are some of the oh, it's going to be a rough morning already, right? What are some of the concerns that they have and have expressed to you?
In the new district?
Either.
Okay, either one. Yeah. The concerns that I've had before redistricting and the previous District 8 was about the lack of opportunities for young people. That was a big concern there because there's a lot of young people around that area of Myrtle, Moncrief, and Gulf Air, where there's not many outlets for young people to get employment or to get themselves started. And my solution for that was to highlight organizations that teach trades to young people so that they can get the training that they need, get a portfolio going, and then once they go into the market, they can sell their skills to the higher bidder. Once they go into the workforce, one company that is really good with that is the Coffee Project, where they will train children from 16 to 24, and they provide transportation as well. And they do just that. They teach them the value of learning construction skills, how to build things and how to be good with their hands. And so that once they get a portfolio together and they get a certification completing the courses that is paid for by them, they get paid training, by the way. So they get paid training and they get paid to sell their skills to the highest bidder. Once they get done with the certification, they get their portfolio out there and they can get hired right from there by the skills that they're taught. And when I was campaigning there, that was my outlet towards that. Now, of course, crime is a factor as well. And I have to reassert that crime is twofold. With crime, a big reason Jacksonville has a big crime rate is because they keep creating brand new laws that create criminals, especially in criminalizing people who are innocent people. And just recently, you have many examples of that for the past couple of months, where Jacksonville City Council ended up passing laws that are regressive revenue streams for the city at the expense of the people, namely the 2023-0044. That was one law that ended up incriminating and putting a lot of barriers and obstacles in the way of people that want to start small businesses.
Right. So what does the number refer to specifically?
The number referred to?
Yeah, you said 2022-044, which I don't think a lot of people are necessarily going to recognize offhand what ordinance or what law that was. So which one is that one?
That ordinance pertains to banning people from putting light images onto the side of buildings without that person's consent of their small business or their establishment. What they aimed to do was, by selling it, they aimed to stop anti-Semitism or to stop bigotry, racism, things of that nature. But what they ended up doing was putting, like I said, more flaming hoops around those who want to start small businesses. And the lawyers that are going to be prosecuting these people, they're going to get money. And the restitution for the violation of these trespasses, the city ends up getting the money, but not the business owners who were offended. And my thing is, they could have just left the private businesses alone, let them figure it out, let them handle that, as opposed to having government interfere with the process of how they want to handle their own business. Okay.
So that actually leads to one of the questions that is on the list here, because you're talking about crime. And so one of the things that you're highlighting is saying, hey, look, Jacksonville City Council is increasing things that make people criminals. But there's also things that have been criminal behavior for a very long time now. And some of it's widely agreed upon, like homicide and those kind of things. Like nobody's arguing like, hey, we don't really need any laws on homicide.
Right.
And I'm going to put this up on the screen so that other people can see it here as well. Oops, I just removed, no, there we go. Bam, there we go. I got this. So it's number 8 here on the list. It says earlier this month, the Florida Times Union reported that Jacksonville saw 163 homicides. Let me make this screen bigger so you can read it from your angle there. Hopefully, there you go. So 163 homicides in 2022, the second worst total that this century, exceeding 2019's 162 by 1. It is often said that crime control is a blend of enforcement, prevention, and intervention. Under our local government structure, the independently elected sheriff is responsible for law enforcement. As the next mayor, or in your case, council member, what prevention and intervention strategies will you pursue for things like homicide that everybody agrees upon is happening more than we would like, and is definitely a crime?
Definitely. My strategy for that is to bring much more community, much more of a community response with preventing homicides. And like I said before, with the extra laws that city council end up putting onto the books, it's stretching the abilities of the really short-staffed police officers to do a lot more work than they're able to do with the amount of staff that they actually have, as opposed to really training local people, training people how to detect violence, to patrol their neighborhoods, and to guard themselves with the skills that police officers can really give them to create a neighborhood watch program that would be really good, because police officers, they can't be everywhere at one time, especially with how big the city is and how short-staffed they are. There is no way they can be present all at one time. So what they could do is have a more community, backing, so that we can be able to work together in a way that'll be conducive for the neighborhoods surrounding Jacksonville, and so that crime can stop before they even happen.
Gotcha. Okay. And I take it that you were opposed to the recent ordinance that they just passed regarding the panhandling as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what's your take on the whole panhandling issue? Because it can be, it's at a minimum annoying. Yeah. Right. I don't particularly enjoy seeing people begging on the corner. I find it a little bit annoying, but annoying is not necessarily criminal. And then when there are some cases, or people have reported, where they're a little bit more aggressive. So maybe they're coming up and they're knocking on the windows. They're maybe grabbing the door handles. I've never had that happen to me, but I assume that somebody has. So what's your take on the whole panhandling issue? Like, what would they have, if you oppose the ordinance that they have, and you're saying that, these kind of ordinances would go toward taking officers away from dealing with homicide, then how do we as a city deal with panhandling?
Panhandling is protected under the First Amendment. Panhandling, soliciting, and asking for money is protected as free speech under the First Amendment, so it shouldn't be infringed upon. What this new bill ended up doing is not only incriminate against the homeless people, but incriminate the people who will voluntarily give to those who are unfortunate as well. It prevents voluntary contributions and voluntary transactions between private citizens and private individuals. And so now, like I said before, that you just mentioned, we're putting policemen onto a whole nother front of enforcement based on public issues dealing with public property that is stretching them extra thin, and it's taking resources away from actually dialing it back down so we can focus on these core neighborhoods that need the help and need the bridge built between the policemen and the community, so that we can actually stop actual crime. Now, as far as the homeless, there can be many ways to satiating the homeless that wouldn't require incrimination. You can have, as a free market solution, you can have an organization, just like how you have people all around the world. They say, hey, you can donate on a monthly subscription basis to someone's growth and livelihood of their climb into the economic ladder. Say you sponsor a guy named Ted, to get him off the street, you give him psych evaluation, you give him job training, you help get him skills, and then the donors who would sponsor this individual, they would get updates every month about his progress and what he's doing, and that your donations are really contributing to this guy's growth and development as an individual, taking him from the streets into the workforce. And there needs to be a way for incentivizing businesses to take on these homeless people who are trying to turn their life around after they've been getting these skills and after they've been getting this training. For example, I heard one suggestion to where if you want to bring felons back into the workforce, you have to give an incentive to businesses, which would be, okay, for one felon that accepts this person to the workforce, suspend property payroll taxes for about a year or so. Okay. Something that would say, okay, cool, he's going to bring a benefit, to a fiduciary benefit to me taking this guy on and giving him a chance for this short period of time. Even if they fire these guys after the first year, it's okay. They have job experience, and they start to grow from there. And of course, the membership is going to stop whenever the person who sponsored these individuals, whenever they feel, especially if they start working and started getting on their own 2 feet. But incriminating these guys and saying that they're a problem in society, when we know that back in 2020, up to September to be specific, Jacksonville City Council allowed the CDC moratorium to be in effect, which created more homeless people because it created a big housing market crash, because government put themselves and the contract between two consenting parties, there should be the renter and the tenant, because the people who were the tenants who were fired or furloughed from their jobs when they allowed the federal government to tell us what job was essential and not essential, they were stuck at home in a precarious position of the likes that they've never seen before. And the stimulus checks that they were getting from pretty much getting paid to stay at home, they weren't paying their landlords. They were putting it into whatever they were putting it into. And these were same guys that were not paying before the pandemic. So you got to imagine the landlord that says, okay, now there's an ordinance by the moratorium. You got to go to the courts to get these guys out of here. What ends up happening? Mortgages end up getting foreclosed. Houses end up becoming, like I said, foreclosed. It gets shut down. And the companies from out of state end up coming in, buying up these houses. Mm-hmm. And now the prices of these homes that's been accumulated by the debt from the previous tenants passed on to the next people. And so what that did was create more homelessness, because now people don't have their homes anymore. They're walking around. For example, in Moncrief, my grandmother's home was broken into when the CDC moratorium was implemented, only just 6 months in its implementation, because of the fact that a lot of people were losing their homes and they were getting into a desperate state. So with that, there are way more factors that tell us that from the central government, from the central authority in the city, they are the biggest arbiters of homelessness being created. And so we should roll back that interference and have a lot more compassion about not only the homeless, but the people that want to give voluntarily.
Okay. So that's interesting that you point out that, hey, you know what? City council, the local city government, they are the problem. Like they're creating more problems.
Yes.
However, one of the questions on here deals with home rule. So let's put that question up on the screen, and let's kind of shift over to the home rule and discuss, like, okay, how do we manage if the local government is being the burden? Mm-hmm. And then we say, okay, well, let's consider what home rule is. And, and that's effectively, for people that may not be familiar with home rule, it's this concept that allows cities and counties to address issues in their city and the county, rather than having a top-down approach from like the state or whatnot. So let's pull that question up on the screen really quickly here. Let's see there. Where's that button? Is that the one no, that is not the one we want. How about this one? There we go. And we'll bring that up nice and big so everybody can see it here and those watching. The Florida Constitution codifies the important principle of home rule, which recognizes that cities and counties are often best positioned to address their own needs. Yet in recent years, the Florida legislature has passed numerous laws preempting local control in favor of Tallahassee knows best philosophy. This approach has produced some deep dives into the weeds of local governance. If elected, will you urge the Duval legislative delegation and other legislatures to defend home rule and local control?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now there's I don't want to say a conflict, but we do need to reconcile. How do we manage, what's the answer for we want home rule, but at the same time, it seems like, tyranny can be at home rule. So how do we how do we reconcile, the potential tyranny with home rule?
We can recognize the potential tyranny and home rule by the government in your home intruding on your home. Right. There's really no way I can really put it. We have a lot of examples of tyranny here in Jacksonville that's not being addressed. For example, I think last year we've had the millage rate increased on our property taxes in order to pay for public school teachers, even though the superintendent ended up getting a hefty raise of $100,000. And she's getting paid twice as much as the mayor of Jacksonville. She gets paid like $300,000 a year. They could have put that same energy from giving her the raise and giving the teachers that very raise. But for some reason within the Jacksonville charter, DCPS is allowed to pretty much bid to the city council to put up a vote on to whether or not that organization can come into the homes of private citizens and increase their property taxes in order to pay for their organization, even though they're supposed to be the ones with the money, especially considering the fact that they got ESSR funds from the central government, from the federal government, the federal level, to bail them out. And that's one reason why they put out so much about wearing masks in the schools, and they wanted kids to, when they go to public school, to wear these masks and things of that nature. It wasn't for the safety of the kids. It was for the funding that they needed from the federal government by way of the American Rescue Plan, specifically called the ESSR funds. Mm-hmm. Now, for the reasons why they didn't just use those fundings to give, financial restitution to those teachers, I have no idea. But that is an example of home rule intruding in the private sector, which goes back into the homeless problem, because you increase property taxes, you make property a lot more expensive. Not only property for homes, but property for businesses. Property for establishments to get going, so that we can bring positive revenue back into the city. So that's an example of that home rule intrusion that we have to recognize, and that we have to pretty much put gasoline down the anthill before it becomes a mountain. Because if we don't push back on these things, then it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I was reading an article the other day about this gentleman who was arrested in his home for printing ghost guns, for example. And now the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Department, the federal agency, they end up coming into our home in Jacksonville in the state of Florida. This federal agency is coming into the states, even though we have what's called an anti-commandeering doctrine, which means that the states have the authority to nullify federal overreach into the locales of the states, because states are sovereign entities and sovereign bodies. They end up coming through and arresting this man for printing out ghost guns and selling them as he wanted to. He wasn't causing any harm to anybody. He was at his home, he was a peaceful citizen, and he ended up getting arrested. And so that was the biggest problem that I had. Was this is an example of what you just mentioned about your home intruding in your personal space as a private citizen that we need to recognize and cut its head off.
So what would you do as city council member? And let me point out that you're going to be one of 19. Now, we have 2 other candidates that are running, so that would give you 2 additional people that would probably side with you on many issues. But let's assume for a moment that that you're the only person there. So you're 1 out of 19 council members. What would you do, or how would you handle trying to minimize the, what we would call tyranny at home?
Building coalitions at home within my district, because it's one thing to be just one council member in the face of 19 total. There's another thing about building coalitions within your district that will back you up, that will magnify your message, so that everybody else around the vicinity can also know and recognize what tyranny at home looks like. For example, you have Brady, Texas. I mentioned the story a lot. Brady, Texas, which is a town of about less than a few thousand people. Definitely way smaller than Jacksonville, of a population of a few thousand people. They ended up rejecting the stimulus checks and this bailout money that Joe Biden wanted to give to Texas. They did this by having the council members that were there building coalitions around their town and their districts to bring awareness to what these things do. It was a very educational process. And it wasn't, when I say educational, I'm not saying in a very, not cynical, but in a, me as I'm looking down on somebody. It's not, disparaging anybody when I'm saying I'm educating people, but exposing them to the principles of federalism, of thinking locally, acting locally, and recognizing that the closer home your government is, the more powerful that it is. Not only because it affects you directly, but the federal government doesn't have the authority to do what your locale needs to do, because I said we are products of the states, and the states are sovereign entities. And with that education that they were giving to the people in their districts, they were able to come to a wider consensus on what these federal overreach programs does. Because you take federal money, you take government strings, and when that happens, what happens is pretty much what happened in Jacksonville. You have over 130 small businesses being wiped away because of the lockdown, 67% of which are never going to come back. Property taxes are the highest it's been in a long time. The amount of small businesses that are being able to be built has stagnated, the likes of which we've never seen before. And that's what I would pretty much saturate in my message. And of course, I'll be willing to work with other councilmen on many issues, because after all, we're partners. We got to work together to bring out the vision that best suits everybody in Jacksonville. But what I will not compromise are the people within my district. If the plan that they have is going to overreach on what the will of District 8 wants, because after all, I'm not there as an elected king. I'm there as a representative of the greater interest of the people in my district that elected me to be there.
Right.
So if they end up saying, hey, we got to do something and it's going to sacrifice the integrity of my district, like, for example, very simple, we want to give money to the stadium. We want to give out some bailout money to these guys over here. And we'd like your district to contribute. I would say, no, you can give whatever you want to give, but let's just not have District 8 be a part of that, because that's not what we do.
Okay. Gotcha. Speaking of local things that get paid for, and you mentioned like the stadium and stuff like that. Here's a nice, easy question. We'll take it easy for just a second here. And let's put that one up on the screen here. There we are. All right. And this was actually trying to figure out. There we go. Find that little button there. So which Jacksonville taxpayer-owned or supported facilities, parks, community centers, performing arts venues, museums, stadiums have you visited? Do you have a favorite? And then we'll ask another question after that. So have you visited any recently?
I've been to Lonnie C. Miller Park.
Okay. So tell us about it. Lonnie C.
Miller Park is where is it specifically located? It was in the previous District 8.
Okay.
Which is south of the Trout River. I believe it's on. Oh my gosh, I forget the street that it's on, because I only been there one time. Me and Marcus Reeder, the vice chair of the Libertarian Party,
right.
Duval, when we went out there campaigning, we went there, and of course you have the main park, the main courtyard or whatever, but it baffled us how big and gorgeous, how expansive this park really was. And there was so much history that is there. You can clearly see it, because that's just that area in general has a lot of historical significance in Jacksonville. And Lonnie C. Miller Park, to me, represents that old Jacksonville that is still preserved at that park. There is a whole stage where I believe Marcus has a picture of it, where we thought about having the Gold Rally initially, over there, until we settled on to the brewery, Veterans Craft Brewery, right, on 8999 Western Way, February 25th. Be there. Shameless plug real quick.
Right, but, shameless plug. So let me throw you a curveball, if you don't mind.
Of course.
All right. He said, of course, folks, so I can throw him one. And it's also my show, so I can kind of do what I want.
This is true.
Home rule. So just a moment ago, you said, hey, like if the city council wants to give money to the stadium or something like that, I'm going to be like, hey, you keep District 8 out of it. And then we just talked about what did you call it? C. Miller Park? Is that what C?
Lonnie C. Miller.
Lonnie C. Miller. The Lonnie C. Miller Park. So does that mean that other districts shouldn't go for paying towards Lonnie C. Miller Park?
Other districts, if they want to go to Lonnie C. Miller Park, it's a public park. Mm-hmm. They can go there if they want to.
Okay.
It's public property.
But what about paying for it? I'm just like saying, hey, if District 8 is going to be in some way exempt from paying from, for this public-ish thing, then would it work in reverse? Does it work with, hey, there's something that's public? Now let me be clear. I get it that the stadium is not quite public.
Right.
Okay, it's a private entity, so there's a bit of a distinction there, and it's a significant distinction because the park is vastly different. But I'm just saying, does it work in reverse to say, hey, you know what? These other districts, they shouldn't have to pay for things in this district?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it absolutely works in the same vein, because there's plenty of people that go to Lonnie C. Miller Park anyway that's within that district that the park will do just fine.
Okay. All right. It was just a little curveball question. Now, I mean, I don't think tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think that the council the candidates for council are going to be focusing on parks and, the smaller things, maybe cleanup or something like that, which happens. The Libertarian Party, by the way, does go and clean up the parks.
Absolutely. All right, so not only do we go and clean up parks, but also fill up potholes. And that was a big part of the campaign, to show that I'm not going to be the candidate that's just going around campaigning in a blazer and some loafers all the time everywhere I go. Also, my candidacy was my activism. We've as the Libertarian Party of Duval County, fix plenty of potholes. We have followers on our Facebook that send us pictures of these very crazy sized potholes. And what we would do is go out there and we just fix it up to let people know that we're not just out here just saying we're going to do things. We're actually doing those things. And once elected into council, we're going to expand on that and continue that tradition.
All right, awesome. So, and yes, and by the way, folks, just if you're watching and you're not really familiar, which you should be, I happen to be also be the chair. That's my side gig. This is my other side gig, and then I actually have a job. So I'm doing a lot of things here, folks. So let's see. We've got a comment here about the parks. Let's see what we've got here. It looks like Tub has said that the park system is different from the stadium in terms of use, and I absolutely agree. It is a completely different. It was a thought that I had in terms of, hey, if we're distinguishing who's paying for what, does it work in the reverse necessarily? That doesn't mean that it's going to be something that gets focused on. So let's move on to another question here. Let's see. There's all these questions, and I'm trying to. You know what? One of the first ones I actually really, really like. So let's go to the number one question here, and we're going to put it up on the screen. So let's get it up right there, and bam. So number one. Fast forward to the last day of your term in office, June 30, 2023. Oh, I'm sorry. That would actually not be it. June 30, 2027. How will Jacksonville be different because of your service at City Hall? So what's going to be different?
It's going to be different at the last day by
him leaving.
You know,
no. Finally, we're all gonna be like, finally, we got this other council, because we're always like trying to get a council member out. Like, we got to get that guy out, and so we're gonna be like, woo, it's gonna be different because we're finally getting this guy out. Okay, no, seriously, what's gonna be different? Like,
I think it's gonna be different on my last day in my first term of city council. I believe District 8 will have a lot more legislative sovereignty. I believe that District 8 is going to be a little more prosperous and a little more free to make decisions without the intrusion of the central authority. And I would like for it to be the same with every other district. But since I'm only in District 8, I can only speak to what District 8 wants and needs and the vision that I have within District 8. It's going to be, as far as I can't really speak in the future as far as what developments are going to come about or how much is going to be done as far as anything that's going to be new from the proposals that I'll be bringing. But I know as far as the process is concerned, it's going to be a lot more, we'll have a lot more leverage in the things that we do and the things that we don't want to do. And because City Council today is pretty much a big bully system, man. It's a big system to where they just want to, it's not a bully system by the way they're just being outright malicious but they're malicious by way of how big they want to portray their hearts as being. They want to act as if they are these altruistic, virtuous beings that want to bring vats of candy and vats of sugar to every little interest group by way of them. But what it ends up doing is causing more destitution to those very groups they sell their protection to. For example, the like I mentioned before, the 2023-0044 ordinance that they just passed earlier these past couple of months.
We got to get you away from numbers.
I was like, but that's just what it's called. That's just what it's called. You know?
I mean, you could say the ordinance that does this.
Okay. You're right. The ordinance that prohibited lights and images to be projected on buildings. Okay, they want to do it to protect dispersed communities, specifically in the Jewish communities. But what that ended up doing was prohibiting small businesses and marginalizing minorities in Jacksonville who want to have a small business. Just like with the certificate of usage licensing. It's another way to bring in more intrusion to the process of building businesses, or the redlining that is within the south of Trout River and those areas where it's deemed unlivable. And so there's a lot of housing and bank loan discrimination to people in those communities that's prohibiting them from going the distance. So with District 8, the difference is going to be that we have a lot more sovereignty legislatively and much more financial freedom, because I've sat there and I defended them away from the overreach within the city council.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let's talk money. Not ours, of course, but ours, actually. So let's bring up this next question here real quick. And let's go with, this is question number 9. Under the current law, the new mayor will have just 2 weeks after taking office on July 1st, 2023, to present a proposed budget of more than $1.5 billion to the city council. Council members will then have slightly more than 2 months to revise that proposal and finalize the annual City of Jacksonville fiscal plan. What are your top 3 operational funding priorities and top 3 capital funding priorities?
Number 1, put it back into the debt of Jacksonville.
Okay.
We got to pay our bills, just like with anybody else in their private homes as private individuals. Pay your bills before you do anything else. We got to do way more smarter budget practices in Jacksonville. To give a view about our debt in Jacksonville, we are $3 billion in debt. And in order to pay that off and to make it solvent, the people in Jacksonville, of up to 1 million people, got to pay a tax burden because of their reckless spending, a tax burden of $10,200 each. Now, Charlie Latham, the previous mayor of Jacksonville Beach, he put in a 4-year payment plan to get rid of Jacksonville Beach's debt, and he was successful. Now, why Jacksonville can't do the same thing, I am not sure. So that'll be the top priority with the budget I'll be proposing within Jacksonville as a city councilman, is to work on ways to cut the budget, cut out what's not working. Of course, managing the money that we already have right now. Managing the money that we have right now, but if things that are working in our budget, okay, cool, that's fine. But if it's not working in our budget, cut it off immediately. Okay. So we can be a lot more financially solvent, a lot more responsible, because that's what we have to do first and foremost if we want to progress as a city. They always want to try to develop way too fast, and that's not a way to go. They got too much invested money, invested trust and leeway with the Downtown Investment Authority to come up with ways to stimulate economic growth in the city. But I believe they're overcompensating because, as I've mentioned before, back in 2021, over 130 small businesses were taken away in Jacksonville, 67 of which will never come back ever again. That was the lifeblood of the city that was pumping the financial stimulation that we needed. Not the stadium, which is only going to bring very seasonal upticks and stimulation economically. And it's not as if the stadium is going to be bringing 40-hour-a-week jobs with good pension, pay, benefits, all this type of stuff. It's going to be petty, seasonal, part-time jobs that not even young people would who want to have a living wage would be happy to be working in. Okay. I worked in Safe Management. That's one of the companies in there, Safe Management. I worked there before with like 15 years ago. 10 years ago, maybe. And I would forget I was even employed half the time. That's how little I was even out, how non-busy that I was.
So the debt is 1. What's 2 and 3?
The debt is 1. 2 is going to be financial restitution for the damages caused by Jacksonville's reckless spending. Okay. For example, the people that were 130 small businesses who were put down, they should be restituted for that in some way, shape, or form. It is not going to be a stimulus payment. It's just giving back the money that's already owed to them. So it's not new money that's got to be printed by the Federal Reserve going through the federal government and passed through as another bill that's going to be coming through the Florida as a state. And then we bid on pretty much how much we want when it comes to Jacksonville based off of how good or how bad we're doing. It's going to be money that's already in Jacksonville that we're going to give back to them because that was taken from them. For example, another example of market failure in Jacksonville was the recycling debacle that we suffered last year from October 3rd to about April 4th, where for those 6 months, we didn't have any recycling pickup. But it was because of a failure of Jacksonville City Council to renew the contract with Republic, and then they had to take and then Meridian had to take the lower bid. But anyway, we end up suffering the results of what Jacksonville City Council failed to do. And so we still end up paying tax dollars on a service that we were not getting. No other business in the world says, hey, give us, pay us up front. And if we do the job, then we do the job. But if we don't, then we're still going to get paid. Imagine paying a roofer to fix the roof of your house, but he hasn't come through in 6 months and you're still getting the bill. It doesn't make any sense. Government is the only business to where you pay them up front for a job that they don't even do. And then they come back and they ask for a raise. I want to stop that model completely because our tax dollars are being wasted.
So before we get too, we're diverging here a little bit. We're talking about number 2 was you're gonna pay restitution to the local companies who were damaged by the local ordinances or not ordinances. the mandates that occurred.
Right. That's right.
So doesn't that add to our debt if we're taking money? I mean, because where's that money coming from and what's it not going to?
Like I said, it's not going to be coming from a brand new Federal Reserve payment plan where you got to print more money. That's money that's already within the city. It's got to be put back into the hands of the people. For example, if we end up say, for example, with the recycling debacle and the trash waste pickup, for those who don't want to contract with the city no longer, they want to go to a private company and a private business that want to come through and pick up their waste. They can do that because I want to give options to those people. For those that end up going independent, that's fine. I want to give a tax refund and reimbursement for those 6 months they had to pay out of their own money,
right?
Taken from the city for that time period, and also for the $140,000 in tax revenue that was taken from them to build the 15 different trash sites around Jacksonville.
Okay,
and the overtime that they paid to city workers to pick up the trash waste when they could have just did the right thing the first time and renew their contract on time. So that's where it'll be coming from. It's not going to be coming from brand new money being printed and thus increasing the debt and devaluing our currency. It'll already be money available within Jacksonville's budget.
Okay. And then what's your third item?
Infrastructure.
Definitely
going to be infrastructure. For example, over there in the Ocean Way area, specifically Blue Whale, Shamrock Avenue South, and Moby Dick. These are actual streets. And it's actual streets. Just like in the west side where you have Boy Blue, right, Cinderella, all these types of stuff. Jacksonville is very special. And but over there in that area, when Hurricane Ian came a few years ago, they were submerged in about 12 inches of water because of the fact that the culverts or the pipelines that the water from the creek goes through to get to the river, it was dammed and it was blocked up because of the big neglect of the previous administrator of that, or the previous councilman of that district, which was at that time District 7, before redistricting.
Right.
That neglect ended up almost costing some lives, but it caused a lot of damages in people's private property because of that neglect of the infrastructure there. My solution for that would be to not raise up taxation. It'll be not ways where people will make their lives more expensive, but looking to businesses, small businesses around Jacksonville with the resources that I have to be pretty much a directory for whatever the people in my district needs, not interfering with their daily lives. The only thing I'm doing is facilitating a sale. Say, for example, you have Alvin's Culverts in Jacksonville. It costs only $5,000 to fix a culvert, about $5,000, with about 40,000 plus registered voters within my newly redistricted line north of Trout River. There's way more than enough capital that we have within the people in that district to get the infrastructure finished for those culverts to be replaced and maintained in Jacksonville. Not just that one, but the other ones that surround that area. So what I would do is get a quote from these guys, get their insight, get their professional input, facilitate a sale, and have, as opposed to city council meetings, because the only thing that's going to do with the city council meetings is create more red tape, more bureaucratic process, more hoops to jump through, more of, okay, I'll pencil you in, talk to my assistant, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible, which means never. What I'm going to do is talk to the people within District 8 myself and hold meetings or give out a census for everybody within the district to consent to a monthly payment plan that'll go directly to the infrastructure within their district so that they can be first-hand contributors to the development within the communities.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're getting close to our time here, and I do want to take at least a question from one of the viewers here. So this one comes from that Libertarian lady, and she wants to know, can you talk a little bit about how the local Jax duopoly needs libertarians on the city council and how you would vote no on all this frivolous spending? So first, I guess the question is, would you vote no on frivolous spending?
Absolutely. I went to a forum with CC.
Don't want to make any assumptions here.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to be that libertarian, but I went to a forum with CCDF last night, and they asked me pretty much the same question. They asked me about how I felt about the gas tax increase and the property tax millage rate increase, and if I would further any tax revenue to go up and all this type of stuff. Would I approve of that? And I said a resounding no. The gas tax is going to take $1 billion from taxpayer money in a span of 25 and 30 years. And also, I went on a rant earlier about the property tax millage rate increase and how it made housing in Jacksonville way less affordable, and it's putting a cap on the home building industry. And it's because there is no incentive to build more new homes. There's a lot of proposals I've read from the new mayoral candidates coming into Jacksonville. I mean, they're in Jacksonville now, but up for election, and they propose rent control and things of that nature to create a solution for the rising cost of housing, where it's not bad. All you got to do is pull back on that property tax millage rate increase and make it to where the person who pays their mortgage, pays their house off. Once they do that, you nullify property tax. They shouldn't have any more property taxes. Right. It doesn't make any sense, because they should be able to own their property and not pay property tax, because now they have sovereignty over their own private property. Right. So yeah, as a libertarian within the duopoly of city council, those will be the things that I will propose. These are the ordinances that I'll be proposing that we put up for a vote every time. We're going to work tirelessly as if it's a full-time job to put these proposals in place.
Gotcha. All right. So how do people, so we're getting up close to our time here. So let's talk about, let's narrow down how people can find you. What events are you going to be at coming up? How can people get a hold of you if they're like, hey, you know what? I want to talk more. I want to support you in some way. How does that happen?
They can go to RonTracy4Jax.com, RonTracy4Jax.com. Go there. I have articles that I've written. I have articles that I've written and videos that I've also produced. What you can do is donate now. Once you go to the donate button, there's plenty of donate buttons there. Don't look at it as a donation, but look at it as an investment into my campaign and into my candidacy. Spread the word. Don't keep me a secret. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. People in District 8 in the Ocean Way area, New Berlin, Dunn's Creek, Yellow Bluff, in that area. If you don't even know where you are within the district, on my website, I have a GIS map that'll show you exactly where you are in place within the newly redistricted map, way before Jacksonville City Council was, because they haven't updated the map yet, because as we all know, government is pretty slow. But with the private citizenry, things will work much more efficiently within the private sector, within our free market. Just one of those things that we do. So go to RonTracy4Jax.com. Also go on Facebook. You can type in RTR4CC. It's way more convenient than typing in Tracy Robison for Jacksonville City Council District 8. So it's way more convenient doing that. But with that URL, you can just type it in and my page will come up. Go ahead and follow. If you have any potholes around the city that you need us to come and fix, I'll go out there and do it for you. If you want to book me for public speaking arrangements or anything of that nature, send me a message. If you have any questions about the Libertarian Party and what I stand for, from the policies that I propose or for the issues that I propose on my website, please let me know. If you want to cuss me out, tell me how wrong I am, please do that as well. I encourage all these interactions. My Twitter is very good with that. I love it. And
Twitter's a beast on its own.
It really is. So yeah, you can definitely do it that way. And my Twitter handle is RonTracy6. That's a URL. And you can definitely find me there. I think that's
any events you got coming up? You were at a forum last night.
I was at a forum last night, and I'm here right now. That's one. That's one. And starting next week, Monday, the 20th, me, Eric Parker, and Anthony Welty are going to be over there. We're going to meet at Dick's Sporting Goods over in Max Leggett Parkway in River City Marketplace, and we're going to go by the interstate, and we're going to be waving signs along with our other volunteers that are going to be with us. We're going to be waving signs. We're going to be handing out flyers to the Gold Standard Rally that week on the 25th, which will be Saturday. We'll also be talking about our candidacy. We'll talk about our campaigns. We'll talk about libertarianism. We'll talk about many things. We're going to interrupt people's wonderful day of going shopping with their family. We're going to hound them down and talk about the great, wonderful word of the Libertarian Party and the non-aggression principle, and also about our candidacy and our campaign. That's going to be Monday and Tuesday, the 20th and the 21st, where we're going to be doing that. That Wednesday, I believe I have an interview with Larry Sharp that day. Thursday, we're going to be going out into the neighborhoods. We're going to pass out flyers. We're going to pass out more literature and keep the word alive, keep the word going. And then that Friday, I have an interview with Lit TV Network about how libertarianism can help the African-American community. And then the following day will be the Gold Standard Rally at 8999 Western Way at Veterans Craft Brewery. You're going to have Larry Sharp there, the former candidate for governor of New York. Is that correct? Yes. And also former governor candidate Chase Oliver. He's going to be there as well. He's also the presidential candidate for 2024. They just had a forum with other libertarian candidates who are running for president about last night, I believe. They're going to be there as well. You're going to have me, candidate for District 8. You're going to have Eric Parker, candidate for at-large number 1, and Pastor Jerry Tubb Rohrbach. He's going to be there. He's a candidate city council at-large District 5. So we're all going to be there. Bring your questions or comments and concerns, and we'll be able to express them and tell you how we feel and what we're going to do. Also have some drinks, have a good time, stand on one leg, pat yourself on top of the head,
right.
Rub your belly counterclockwise, saying rubby bubby baby bunkers. This is what we do.
All right. So let's close this out with a little promo for the 3 candidates that we have, and also for the event coming up on the 25th. I want to thank everybody for tuning in so early in the morning, and make sure you pass this video around and let people know that, hey, we've got Ronald Tracy Robison, who is running for District 8. So with that, I want you to stay safe and guard your liberty.
Eric Parker here. I'm your candidate for Jacksonville City Council at-large Group 1. I just wanted to remind you about our event we have coming up on February 25th from 6 to 9 p.m. We'll be here at Veterans United Craft Brewery, and we'll be discussing liberty. So if you're passionate about liberty movement and local craft beer, come out and spend time with us. We have 3 amazing local Jacksonville Libertarian candidates, along with Larry Sharp and Chase Oliver.